This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
Today's sponsor is eSpark. Stay tuned to learn about this amazing differentiation and intervention tool for kindergarten through 5th grade reading and math teachers. Differentiating instruction for reading kindergarten through 6th grade. Oh, this is a big topic, and it is worth an extended episode of the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. Dr. Robb is such an expert, and she was just pouring out her wisdom as it relates to teaching reading. I couldn't help it. This episode is a bit longer, but very important for teachers of kindergarten, really through middle school, about reading instruction and differentiation. I hope you enjoy it and look forward to hearing your feedback on social media. Oh, I'm so excited today for us to talk with Robb with over 43 years of classroom instruction. The thing that impresses me the most about Laura is that she goes back into the classroom for 3 or 4 months every year. She has written 25 books for teachers. It may even be more than that by now, Laura, but it's a lot of books. And yeah, we're going to talk about differentiating instruction for reading. We'll break it down by grade level. But first, Laura, thanks for coming on the show. And where do we start? Are there any prerequisites for differentiating instruction with reading that you advise for teachers?
Yes, I do. The first thing is I want teachers, and this is an all year long thing, I want them to build trusting relationships with the children they teach. Because, Vicki, if you don't have trust and the kids aren't comfortable talking to you and sharing things with you, then the amount of progress and the amount of honesty you're going to get from them will diminish unless you continue to build those relationships, hear them, be positive, and gain their trust. The other thing is ongoing formative assessment, which includes lots of careful observations, listening to discussions or partners working. It also, in my mind, includes conferring and then reading kids' notebooks, what they write about their reading or other subjects in a notebook. When we put all those things together and we watch children every day, we learn about them, and what we learn about them informs our instructional decisions and the moves we make. So I might have 3 children who need more help with using vocabulary and finding context clues in the text for building vocabulary. The other class, maybe the rest of the class is doing independent reading. I might take 5 minutes and do a little intervention, a little scaffolding, and see if I need to do even more than just that 1 5-minute meeting with a child. So it's ongoing, it's all day long, all week long, and you can't have a rigid program or a scripted program because children aren't scripted. They're all unique. They all come to us with different needs, with different background experiences. That's the joy of teaching, is as you get to know every child, you're going to be able to find ways to move them forward. And that's one of the keys to differentiation.
So my listeners will know exactly what I'm going to say. I always say you have to relate to educate. You have to start with that relationship. In the artwork of teaching, the masterpiece of teaching is that relationship, isn't it?
I'm so happy you used the word art, because the art of teaching includes authenticity, giving kids authentic experiences, being able to be creative as a teacher, using your creative thinking out of the box for what a child might need, and also giving them an aesthetic experience that the texts that we share with them should touch their minds and their hearts. And it's the heart that really opens them up to reading.
It does. I absolutely love that. So those are our prerequisites to differentiate. We have to understand that students are different. We have to understand who they are, getting to know them through their writing and having this authentic relationship. That's awesome. So how do you break it down by grade level? I think you said you want us to start down in kindergarten. So let's start lower and move on up.
First, I'm a big believer that play is one of the best ways for children, and I think and adults, to learn. We have given up our play, but I want to bring it back to all grade levels, but especially in kindergarten. So I want there to be a lot of play, a lot of role playing. And I also want the teacher to read aloud many, many times during the day and read 2 or 3 books and then ask kids, what book would you like to hear again? Because we know that every rereading, the children hear more, they learn more, and they see more in the illustrations. There has been a big push to have reading groups in kindergarten. I am only in favor of organizing children into a group or working with one child if there's only that one child who comes in either already reading well because they've learned early on, or they have everything that they need to be ready to learn how to read. I think one of the worst things we do, Vicki, is we develop like a program. This is what everyone will do. So that in a kindergarten class, you're going to have some children who really can read. So why should they be doing phonics and phonemic awareness when they need to be reading books and talking about them? And by the same token, if the children are not ready for some aspects of phonics, then we have to reverse. And I'll take 2 or 3 kids in each arm and read to them to rebuild that experience that maybe many of them missed at home. But we know the more stories children hear and the more stories they talk, the more they develop what's needed to break the code.
So I have a question. As parents talk to you and you have some kids in kindergarten reading and some not, do you have parents who say, you're not being fair to my child because you're not putting them in a reading group and that child is actually maybe not ready yet?
You can put them in a group, but you can do other things with them. And you can tell the parent, this is a pre-reading. And I think we need to explain to the parents what the children need, that the worst thing we can do for their child is to push them in a situation where they will be frustrated and they won't be successful. And at such a young age, it's heartbreaking. So a lot of that has to do with parent-teacher communication. I'm really big on kindergarten teachers sending home a newsletter twice a month. And in that newsletter, celebrating some of the things they do in the class, but also inviting parents to do things with their children, knowing that they're all not going to do it. But I always look at the glass half full. If several parents do it, then I take that as a win. And when parents get together, they start talking about things like that. And if they find out one group is doing it, almost is like catching like a cold, and they're going to want to do some of the things. And we want to include parents and honor them and respect what they know about their child. That's very important.
We partner with parents, and partnership always works better in mutual respect. That respect flows both ways.
And so I always invite parents to come to the classroom. I always have an open policy. And with the little ones, parents who work, so they can try to get an hour off and come first thing in the morning. And so I'll change the schedule to make sure that they see things that are important to them. I think that I've never met a parent that wants to push a child if it is really going to not benefit the child. And the other thing they need to know is that by the end of kindergarten, once they develop some ability to work with word families and sing songs and phonemic awareness and exposed to all kinds of literature, that they'll learn how to read very quickly.
Okay, lots of great thoughts. And I also love the twice a month newsletter. As we move up first, second, what changes?
Okay, so in first grade, we're starting to do some grouping of children and teaching them in small groups. Some people call it guided reading. I prefer strategic reading because we're teaching them some very high order strategies and how to apply them to text. We're giving them strategies for, like, one of my favorite things is analogous thinking. So if you can say main, you should be able to say maintain because the pattern is the same. And so when I work on word families, I'm working a lot on word patterns that are common in our language, which really helps children. And so we have groups that meet 3 or 4 times a week for 15 to 20 minutes. We're using a text and we're learning to do some major thinking with illustrations and photographs because the beginning texts are very sparse. They have either one word or a short sentence that is repeated. But it's also important if you're doing that kind of small group work is to do a lot of read alouds with children and introduce them to all kinds of picture books, to introduce them to poetry. And a lot of times I will put poems on a chart because they're short, they're accessible, they can be funny, kids love them, and they can learn to read them very quickly. And I find that with poetry, I can build their vocabulary. And so I have small groups, I have lots of read alouds, we have playing with poetry, and I am a big believer in shared reading with oversized books so that I can show all the ins and outs of looking at print. And so we call that the concepts of print, that you indent for a paragraph, there are spaces between words. Another way to build the concepts of print that I think we've lost it is the morning message, where on chart paper, the children help you compose a message. It could be something that happened at school yesterday. It could be the weather if it's raining outside. And then you model also indenting for a paragraph, starting with a capital letter, spaces between words, and I show them how to use two fingers. And what happens when you get to the end? You have to start a new line. And then the kids read it again and again, and we read it at the end of the day, and they add something. It's like a closing activity that brings the day the full circle. But all around literacy, which really, yes, there are a lot of common mistakes. Children have trouble or confuse letters, or they reverse letters. Some kids who will read and they're not thinking, what I just read, did it make sense? That is a really common mistake. That's one of the things we talk about. When you read something and you look at the pictures, it should make sense. It shouldn't be out in left field. And so that's a question I begin to ask kids. Did that make sense? Can you tell me why? Because what I'm trying to do, and I want teachers to do, is to get them to internalize some of these questions that help them look at issues like that.
No, the show is not over. You have much more left to go to talk about differentiation of reading. But because this is an extended episode of the 10-Minute Teacher with Dr. Lori Robb, I wanted to take a moment to thank eSpark, the sponsor for this episode. eSpark is free for teachers and is a differentiation and intervention tool that helps teachers of kindergarten through grade 5 save time by providing ready-to-go, standards-based reading and math activities that students love. I've written a full review of eSpark on my blog. So go to go.espark.app/CoolCatTeacher. That's go.park.app/CoolCatTeacher. And sign up today for eSpark. Now, back to the show. Fantastic. Okay, let's go to second grade, or second and third, however you want to group it.
Yeah, second and third, again, it's pretty much very similar strategic reading groups but I want to talk about those for a minute, and the same goes for first grade. If you're in a group, it doesn't mean you're in it for life. I want groups to be flexible and fluid. So if a child has really learned to do a lot, can really now decode with automaticity and recall text, do some thinking with text, can decode words that are new to them because they know the parts of words. They have a good sense of phonemic awareness and they're using their phonics. I want you to think about where can I move that child into a different group. The other thing we do is running records. Running records are an excellent way to monitor children's ability to decode. I like them to retell because I think it's important. It's not just saying the words. The minute we can say a word, we have to teach comprehension because that's what reading is all about. It just can't be saying, that's why I'm pretty opposed to nonsense words because that will confuse a child. We need to give them real words that are in our language. So I want to minimize the confusion But you want to make sure that your formative assessment is hitting key areas. If I have three different groups and one group is working visualizing and another group is working on inferring and a third group on compare and contrast. And I have a child in the visualizing group who really can make mental pictures. When I look at the journal, the pictures are detailed. The child writes a little explanation or caption under the picture to help me understand it better. I notice that the reading is very fluid and expressive. And so I have a conference with that child. It's not just like willy-nilly. I want to get a one-on-one. And what I'll do is try out a book a little more challenging with a running record to see if what's happening in the book they're in is transferred to another level. And the other thing I'm going to work on is I want to get a real clear picture of that visualizing. And then I have to make a decision. Am I going to move the child into the group that's learning to infer? And that's probably where I will go because authors expect readers to infer, and it's a key strategy. Compare, contrast is a little more challenging. So I would make that move. And I would tell them, I'm moving you, but I want you to tell me if you're comfortable. And that's where the trust and the relationship comes in. Because if they trust you and they're comfortable talking to you and you're positive with them, then they're going to let you know. And positivity is so important because, see, when you get into third and fourth grade or second and third, you start getting some behaviors that make teachers nervous, where a child will say, I hate reading. Well, you can't make me read. And believe me, I feel that way too. I feel I will make you read. I will teach you how to read. No, wrong answer. My answer is, I'm so glad you could share your feelings with me. And I tell the child, we'll just keep working together. And I want you to keep sharing your feelings and tell me what about what we're doing makes you hate it. What about what we're doing makes you want to do anything but that? So you see those words that a child says to us, they're telegraphing the message of, I need help. But they don't know what to ask for all the time. And it's our job to value their honesty so they'll keep being honest. I don't want them to fake and tell me, oh, I love reading Mrs. Robb. I need to know where they're coming from, very honestly. And it's okay to be there. Because I tell you, the fact that they're there tells me a lot about where they've been in the past, that they haven't had enough success, that they have to work very hard to read, and it's tiring and exhausting. And why would they like it?
I love that. I have a slide I use in some of my speeches, and it's a note that a student had written where I had said, how do you feel about this particular subject we were learning? And the student said, I'm scared. I don't know if I can do it, but it will be okay because I know you love me and you're a good teacher.
The kids have to know it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to have feelings. I've never had a class where everyone just says, oh, I love reading. Just give me the books.
It doesn't happen, does it?
I mean, that's a fantasy, right? We have to take the child where that child is and not make them feel bad for feeling that way. Because I have to tell you, the feelings will change. They just need to experience success.
I love that. Okay, so as we move to the older grades, you want to talk a third, fourth, and then we hit fifth last? Because this is going to end up being an extended episode, and that is okay, Laura, because this is great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, third and fourth are the same. It's the same thing. Lots of read alouds. But at this point, and even from the beginning, I like the read alouds, some of them to be interactive, where the teacher stops and says, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry if this character makes this choice. So that you're teaching the child that a book brings out feelings inside of you that are very powerful. And then I'll read a little more and I'll stop and I'll say, one person want to share how they feel now? And if nobody does, I go on. It's okay, because if nobody does, it tells me that they're not ready to go public with sharing that way. But you can do that interactive read aloud with applying a strategy, with inferring, with visualizing. Let me tell you what I see when the author writes these words and then again stop. And sometimes it's good to have a little pair share so they get secure before you ask them to share. If they don't share, and maybe it's because I've been doing it so long, as a young teacher, it's hard. Like you're thinking, what am I doing? What's going wrong? It's not that you're doing something wrong. The kids are not there yet, and it's okay. That's part of our job, is to find out how we can bring them along.
That's also part of honesty, saying, I'm not ready to share that,
Right,
respecting
and it's
that.
okay. Yes, you hit it right on the nose, Vicki, respecting. And the child knows when you respect them, even if it's not the way they know they're supposed to feel, or everyone has told them they're supposed to feel. I don't know what the right way of feeling is. It's whatever the kid feels. That's the right way. And in third and fourth grade, a lot of notebook writing, drawing characters at the beginning and what they're like, and drawing a character at the end and what they're like, doing a little writing about it, trying to find what made that change. Was it another character? Was it an event that the character went through? So we're doing a lot of drawing and writing and sharing, and I believe a lot in teachers. So I keep a notebook and I model the kind of response that I'm hoping they will do. So I will draw and write, or sometimes I just write. Sometimes I just make a list. Whatever it is, that becomes a resource for them. And I write a lot of that in my books about teachers' notebooks, because they become a teaching tool and a resource. You do it in front of them, but then when they're ready to write, I can bring up a notebook page of mine and say, remember when I wrote this? And I took some notes, or I drew a little picture, and then I did the writing. And so I'm refreshing their mind about how do you think about books on paper. And that's really a wonderful way to get inside a kid's head. I use their notebooks. We talk about it during conferences, and they tell me about it, and I learn so much.
That's great. So let's move on to
fifth grade. Okay. And it's very much the same. In fifth grade, I like to bring in choice boards, so that if I'm working with a group, I have choice boards where they can choose something to do. But the something should not be a worksheet. It should be authentic reading, writing, or watching a video that has something to do with literacy. Maybe an excerpt of it might be a little play that's on video for 5 or 6 minutes that kids watch, because that's their medium. I'm very respectful of that. And sometimes you might want stations, even in the younger grades too. Fifth graders like it because they can have choices and be independent. But again, the stations should focus on reading and writing. So you might have a poem in a station, or you might have a picture book in a station that you want them to read apart and react to it. It should be authentic, and it should relate to literacy. I don't believe in worksheets. I use notebooks. When kids write in worksheets, Vicki, they never learn how to organize their ideas on a page. The worksheet does everything for them. And so if they've only done worksheet, and I get someone in fourth or fifth grade, they're all over the place. They don't even know where to put their name. And that's a skill. How do you organize your paper? Which is why I do the teacher notebooks, because I'm showing them how I would organize that page. But so we want everything. We want choices. We want them to have voice in what they do. And we want it to focus always on authentic reading. And so the other piece that I didn't mention, which is self-differentiation, is classroom libraries. I am a huge believer in independent reading and volume in reading. We know the more kids read, the better readers they become. And so I like classroom libraries. A starter library is about 600 books. I want teachers to give themselves 4 to 6 years to build up to 1,000 or 1,200 books on a range of readability levels, different genres, teach children through modeling how to self-select a book. And so that, to me, is a form of differentiation, because everyone is reading a different book of their choice that appeals to them. I never tell a child what to read. And I can tell you that this has happened to me many times in fifth grade where I'll have a child in 2 or 3 days can't find a book. So I will take 3 books and I'll say, come here, and I'll say, these are 3 books you might like. And I'll do a quick talk about them. And I have to tell you, many of them put them all, and you can't get frosted over that. I cannot make them read and choose a book. It has to come in time when they see their peers doing a lot of independent reading, and when it's comfortable, when they can sit on the floor, or if you have pillows, bring in pillows. Make it, nobody sits and reads up straight at a desk and has a good time. You read in bed, you read in a comfortable chair. We want kids to feel comfortable, but we also want them to know that you have time. You need to come to this with my support, my encouragement, but I'm not going to judge you if you're not starting where everybody else is.
I have to ask this one question. I once heard the quote, life's too short to read a bad book. I usually give myself 20 pages. And if I am just like, it's not happening, just say no, put it up, whatever. Do you give students clues on when maybe a book isn't working for them? Because sometimes I think the problem is the book is just not right for the child and they don't feel like they can put it up. And so they get stuck.
Yeah, we talk a lot about having the right to abandon a book. And if it's a small book, I'll try to read the first chapter before you abandon it. But if it's so awful, come and see me, and I will certainly support your wanting to do it. You have to watch out for the child that abandons that's rare. It really is. But when I was growing up in school, you weren't allowed to abandon it.
Yeah.
If you picked it, you read it, by golly, and you suffered through it. And I remember that feeling very well. Those are things that we talk about, that you have a right to abandon a book and find one that you really care about. And so in all grades, I do interest inventories. I want to find out, what are they interested in? What do they like to do in their spare time? What do they do with their family? What do they do with their friends? And again, that's building relationships. That's part of getting to know who they are and letting them get to know who you are too, with the same questions. And so I'm bringing in books that I think they would really like. And I also ask the kids to recommend, and I will purchase books that they recommend. Absolutely. It's not my classroom library. It's our class.
Thank you, Laura, for talking today about differentiating instruction with reading. We could go on. We could go all the way through 8th grade, couldn't we? Or even probably past. But this has just been so very helpful. And I think it'll be very useful for teachers to see the big picture. And I just absolutely love it. And also that you have the heart of a teacher, because it does start with relationship. Thank you, eSpark, for sponsoring today's extended episode. eSpark is a differentiation and intervention tool that helps teachers of kindergarten through grade 5 save time by providing ready-to-go, standards-based reading and math activities that students love. eSpark is free for teachers. Each quest in eSpark includes a pre-quiz, framing videos, instructional videos, practice activities, critical thinking challenges, a post-quiz, and optional student recording. I love that for activities to remain in the eSpark catalog, it must have a high in student engagement rating based on student-chosen thumbs up or thumbs down. You can even import NWEA or STAR data to give students a more differentiated experience from the first logon. Oh, and did I say it is free for teachers? So go to go.espark.app/CoolCatTeacher. That's go.espark.app/CoolCatTeacher and sign up today for eSpark. You'll be glad that you did. And as always, email me at Vicki@CoolCatTeacher.com. That's VICKI@CoolCatTeacher.com to let me know what you think about today's sponsor or today's show. Thank you, eSpark, for sponsoring this extended episode today.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you like this program, you can find more at CoolCatTeacher.com. If you wish to see more content by Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook and Twitter under CoolCatTeacher. Thank you for listening.